"You'll sell the house to her mother, or you'll never see us again," Ellison said, standing in my kitchen like he owned the place. The same kitchen where I taught him to measure flour, where he spilled milk down the cabinets and cried because he thought I'd be mad. I wasn't mad then, but I was something now. It wasn't a request. It was a line in the sand. I leaned against the counter, the chipped tile cool beneath my hand. Dahlia stood beside him, silent but smug. She didn't need to speak. Her words lived in his mouth now. "This isn't just a house," Mom Ellison continued. "It's 3 bedrooms and a backyard. You're one person. She's got family coming from overseas." I blinked. Dahlia's mother didn't speak English. She barely spoke to me at all. The one time we met, she asked if I cleaned the place myself, then called it quaint. But now she wanted it. They brought a realtor with them, a woman in glossy heels and a navy folder. "It's a seller's market," she said, too cheery. "You could make a clean exit. Downsize. Travel." As if I was itching to disappear. The house wasn't just property. It was the last thing my father ever gave me. He didn't leave jewelry or heirlooms, just this place, debt-free corner lot garden out back where he planted marigolds every spring. He'd built the back fence himself with hands that knew what it meant to stay put. But Ellison didn't see that. He only saw what they needed, and what I was in the way of. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply stepped aside and let them walk the hallway. Let them comment on potential. Let them point at my bedroom and say it would make a perfect nursery. They thought I was still deciding. They didn't know the papers had already been signed. So when the realtor asked if I was ready to discuss next steps, I smiled and said, "Yes, but not with you." Then I poured my coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and waited for the next knock at the door. Ellison never said no to his wife. Not once. Not when she redesigned their entire kitchen while he was traveling for work. Not when she refused to come to Thanksgiving because I served coffee in mismatched mugs. Not even when she told me to text first before dropping by with groceries. Dahlia was delicate, curated, always a little too tired, but never too tired to host. Their friends adored her. Her Instagram stories made her life look like a catalog, sunlit countertops, white furniture, gold flatware. A curated life that didn't have space for someone like me. And I was never part of the plan. Not when they got married, and I found out through a photo posted by one of Dahlia's cousins. Not when they bought their second car before paying off the first. Not when they chose a name for the baby that didn't come from either side of the family, but matched the trending tags. To them, I was a placeholder. A bridge between generations, useful, but not permanent. "It's just a house," Dahlia said, finally speaking her tone, soft but surgical. "It would mean everything to my mom. She's never had a home of her own. It's symbolic." I wanted to laugh. Symbolic. My home wasn't a symbol. It was the result of 40 years of early shifts patching drywall myself, choosing fixed-rate loans when others were chasing dreams with variable interest. I didn't inherit ease. I built stability. But they wanted it re-gifted, as if meaning didn't matter. When style showed up with a monogrammed diaper bag and a pitch-perfect smile. "It's not about ownership," Dahlia added. "It's about legacy, about sharing the family's future." No, it was about erasure. They weren't asking me to share. They were asking me to surrender. Dahlia's mother had never worked a day in her life but needed my house to feel settled. And I was suddenly the one making things difficult. That's when I heard the car door outside. Right on time. I stood, slowly walked to the front window and watched as the man they never expected stepped out, documents in hand. The pressure came daily, not loud, not violent, just steady, like water dripping on stone. First it was Ellison. "Mom, you always talk about legacy. This is your chance to pass something down, to show you care about the next generation." Then came the texts from Dahlia, screenshots of nursery ideas, renovation sketches, a message that said she just wants to feel safe. I thought you'd understand that as a mother. They kept using words like family unity future, but underneath it was a transaction. Even my sister called. I hadn't heard from her in months. "You're being difficult," she said flatly. "Dahlia's family covered most of that wedding. This is your turn to contribute." As if silence was my only acceptable form of gratitude. As if handing over the house would finally make me worthy of a seat at their table. I started brewing coffee at midnight just to keep my hands from shaking. The pressure was familiar. I'd felt it before when my husband left, when bills piled up, when I worked double shifts to keep the lights on, and didn't ask anyone for help. I stood in the kitchen staring at the wall above the sink. The yellow paint was uneven in places. My father had painted it with his own hands during one of his last good months. He told me then, "This house has its scars, but so do we." And we're still standing. I reached up and touched the spot where the brush had skipped. It was still their imperfection that never needed fixing. They wanted that wall, that sink, that garden out back that I planted myself. But more than that, they wanted submission, wrapped in politeness. They wanted me quiet, grateful, gone. I set my coffee down and pulled open the drawer where the deed sat untouched. Still in my name. And next to it, I placed the envelope I had prepared, not for them, but for the person now standing in my driveway. The message came just after 11 p.m., long after I'd turned off the lights, but not long enough to quiet my mind. Unknown number. Clara. It's Marcus Leclerc. I heard you may be selling your home. I'm very interested. I read it twice, then a third time. My thumb hovered over the screen, not yet ready to believe it. Marcus Leclerc, from college. From before marriages and mortgages, before any of us had names that carried weight. He was the quiet one in our advanced accounting course. Soft-spoken, precise, observant. We'd studied together once, maybe twice. I remembered how he took notes in block letters, how he always brought 2 pens just in case someone forgot theirs. And now he was a CEO. Not just of any company, but that company. The one that acquired half the startup scene in Northern California. The one Dahlia constantly name-dropped when bragging about her promotion pipeline. Her boss. I hadn't spoken to him in over 10 years. I tapped out a response, slowly. Marcus. I appreciate the message. I'm open to a conversation, but it must remain confidential for now. The dots started typing back almost immediately. Understood. Let's talk tomorrow. And Clara, don't let them rush you. You always knew how to play the long game. That sentence stopped me cold. I hadn't thought of myself as strategic in a long time. Just tired. Just trying to hold ground that everyone else kept stepping over. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Outside, the driveway was empty, but I could feel the shift. A crack in the pressure. A breath of cold air after weeks of stifling silence. Marcus remembered me. And while Ellison and Dahlia were busy circling like vultures, ready to carve up a life they never helped build, someone else was stepping into the room, and not with entitlement, but with terms. The next morning, I brewed my coffee stronger than usual and opened the folder where I kept the deed. I placed a blank sheet beside it. For the first time in weeks, I had something they didn't expect a choice. 3 days later, I signed. The real estate office was quiet, clinical. No fanfare, no emotions, just signatures, initials, and a silver pen that glided like it already knew this story's ending. Sale price, $1.1 million. Buyer Leclerc Ventures, LLC. Clause right of first refusal if the property is ever resold. 10-year lease. Below market value. Fully legal. Fully binding. Condition. I'd stay. I'd keep my keys. Marcus sat across from me. Tie-loose posture, relaxed, but there was nothing casual about the way he watched every detail. Like he'd been waiting for this kind of opportunity. Not just the house me, a woman finally done with permission. He asked only one thing before we signed. Do you want to stay here and be seen or leave and be forgotten? I didn't let him finish the sentence. I signed. The attorney nodded. Documents notarized. Deed recorded. No one knew. Not Ellison. Not Dahlia. Not the realtor who kept circling like a crow. Not even my sister, who'd been repeating the family line like a paid spokesperson. I went home to the same house, same porch, same creaking floorboard in the hallway. Nothing had changed, and everything had. Marcus texted that night. Property officially transferred. They'll find out soon. I didn't respond. Not yet. I sat at the kitchen table and ran my fingers along the surface, tracing a faint scratch where my father once slid his coffee mug too hard. That mark had outlived him. Outlived the expectations they all had for what I'd do with this house. They thought I'd break, or beg, or bend just far enough to hand over the deed like some inherited apology, but I'd sold it. Quietly, strategically, and not to them. The next morning, the calls started again. Dahlia wanted to bring her mother by to walk the property. Ellison said they had a contractor on standby. My sister texted a list of local storage units as a gentle nudge. I made coffee, turned off my phone, and waited. Because this time, the door they wanted to walk through no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the man they never saw coming. They arrived in force. Ellison first trying to look composed, but already sweating through his shirt. Dahlia followed, eyes puffy, but makeup intact. Her mother wore designer sunglasses indoors. The realtor had a manila folder clutched to her chest like it held gospel. And then, just to show they meant business, a lawyer with a clipboard and a forced smile. They sat across from me at the corner table of the restaurant, like a jury already writing my sentence. Dahlia started the show. This house would mean everything to my mother, she whispered. Voice cracking just enough to seem human. She's been through so much. We want her to feel stable. Isn't that what family's for? Ellison chimed in, voice sharper. You're being cold. We're just trying to build something here. Dahlia's mother scoffed, waving her manicured hand. It's shameful. I would have never spoken to my elders this way. You should be grateful we even want to keep it in the family. Then came the realtor, sliding a new contract across the table. You're still holding equity, so this works out better for everyone. Quick close, no fuss. Just sign, and we can begin the transition. I looked at the stack of papers, then at each of their faces. Then I stood. Would you like to see the house? They blinked in sync. Ellison's brow furrowed. Dahlia's eyes darted between her mother and the lawyer. You mean walk through it now? The realtor asked. I nodded once. Yes. I think you should see exactly what you're asking for. They followed me outside like sheep, mumbling confusion, still believing they'd won. The car ride was quiet. Dahlia's mother muttered about flooring options. The realtor was texting someone, probably the stager. As we turned onto the familiar street, I slowed the car and pulled to the curb. And there it was, the white Colonial with navy shutters, flower boxes under the windows, and a brand new security system blinking by the front door. The porch lights were on. The Tesla was in the driveway. And just as I stepped out, the front door opened. Marcus opened the door in jeans and a crisp white shirt, the kind of casual that still commanded attention. Dahlia stopped breathing. Her mother's jaw actually dropped. The lawyer blinked, clearly trying to place him. Only the realtor had enough awareness to recognize him, whispering, "Is that Marcus Leclerc?" Like she was seeing a ghost and a god at the same time. Ms. Mendez, Marcus said, offering me a warm nod. Right on time. He stepped aside and gestured with one hand toward the open entryway. Then to the rest of them. Calm, collected, untouchable, he said, "I believe you were hoping to view my property." Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from awe, but from collapse. Ellison turned to me, confusion, twisting into betrayal. You sold it to him. I met his eyes. No, I sold it to his company. A pause. Then I added, I just happen to live upstairs. Dahlia made a noise like a cough choked in her own throat. Her mother narrowed her eyes as if trying to rewrite the scene by squinting harder. Marcus stepped fully into the doorway now. Would you like to come in? You've already made the trip. No reason not to see what you nearly acquired. The word nearly rang like a bell. The realtor tried to salvage the moment. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Ms. Mendez hadn't confirmed I've got the title deed on file, Marcus said smoothly. And the county clerk has the timestamp. 3 days ago. Fully recorded. Fully legal. Ellison looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. Dahlia couldn't look at me. Her mother took a step back as if insult alone had weight. Feel free to take a look around, Marcus added. But just so we're clear, this is a business property now. Ms. Mendez retains residency upstairs per her lease. Their silence followed us inside. And when they entered the foyer and saw the modern furnishings, the glass desk, the framed company logo on the wall, reality finally sank in. This was no longer their leverage. It was someone else's headquarters. 2 weeks later, the email landed in every inbox. Marcus had made it official. The Maple Street house would serve as the new creative studio for the digital content team Dahlia's department. The subject line was as polished as any launch expanding creative horizons, a residential reimagining. He used words like inspiration, proximity, immersion in domestic storytelling. Translation: You'll be working in the house you tried to steal under my roof on my terms. I brewed my coffee that morning with both hands steady. Outside, the white company SUV pulled into the driveway. Dahlia stepped out first, her heels too sharp for the gravel, followed by a junior designer holding a ring light. I didn't open the door. I waited. At exactly 9:03, a knock. I opened it just enough to be polite. She didn't speak. Just stared past me like she was looking for the parts of the house she believed should still be hers. The air between us felt colder than the California morning. I raised my mug. Welcome to work. She blinked twice, but said nothing. Behind her, Marcus was giving a tour to 2 execs I recognized from LinkedIn. They smiled. They nodded. One of them gestured toward the front porch, admiring the light. They didn't know. Or maybe they did, and that was the point. That afternoon, I stayed upstairs, heard muffled voices below. Dahlia's was the loudest. Something about branding integrity. Something about distractions. But none of it reached me. At 5:01, the voices stopped. Doors closed. Gravel crunched again, and the silence returned. I wiped down the kitchen counter and lit a candle, one of my father's old habits I'd inherited. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a clause for the lease tenant reserves, the right to refuse access to personal quarters during business hours. I hit send, and then I poured myself another cup of coffee, just as my phone buzzed with a new message from Marcus. Ellison called just after 2 a.m. His name lit up my screen like a warning flare. I almost let it ring. Almost. But something told me to pick up. You made your point, he said. No greeting, no hesitation. Sell it back to us. We'll make it right. Make it right. As if the years of dismissal, the threats, the manipulation, all of it could be paved over with a wire transfer and a nod of convenience. I stared at the ceiling, blanketed in the same quiet that had once comforted me when Ellison was a boy, and the nightmares still woke him. That version of him no longer existed. They offered double what Marcus had paid. Said they'd cover closing costs, legal fees, anything. Said they just wanted to bring peace back into the family. But what they really wanted was erasure. To buy back a mistake. To undo the moment I stopped folding. I didn't laugh, but my silence must have said enough. Mom, he added lower. Now this has gone too far. No, I said. This is exactly as far as it needed to go. I hung up first. Later that morning, Marcus forwarded an email. Dahlia's mother had tried to contact LeClaire Ventures directly, offered a private settlement for the property, said she'd match any price. He replied with one sentence, "We do not reconsider contracts to soothe pride." Then he attached a reminder of my lease clause, 10 years below market right of first refusal. Ironclad. Watertight. For the first time in my life, my footing wasn't emotional. It was legal. I spent that evening reorganizing the upstairs closet. Labeled bins, refolded linens tucked away the envelope Marcus had handed me on signing day. Inside it, the full deed transfer, the lease, the clause that kept my future mine. I placed it in a locked drawer next to the photo of my father in front of this house. The one he built. The one I kept. Then I made coffee, opened the window, and waited for Monday. Here is in full prose, continuing the tone and story arc. Total length 438 words, not 4380. As that seems like a typo, if you need a 4380 word version, let me know. Months passed. Dahlia now drove a used sedan with a dent in the passenger side. The shine was gone, not just from the car, but from her presence. She no longer walked into meetings like she owned the room. She entered quietly, took her notes, and left before anyone could corner her. I watched her through the bay window sometimes. She never looked up anymore. Ellison stopped calling. No middle-of-the-night apologies. No messages about fixing things. No birthday wishes. Not for mine, not even his own. The silence, once heavy with grief, had become light, like air finally cleared of smoke. But the house stayed warm. Every morning, I brewed my coffee and walked the garden. The same path my father had laid, stone by stone. The soil still remembered his hands. The roses bloomed like they had when I was young, stubborn, unapologetic, and wild. Especially the one that grew near the back fence. The one he called his favorite because it never did what it was supposed to. Some mornings, Marcus would wave from his car on the way to the main office. He didn't stop much anymore. He didn't need to. The message had been sent, signed, notarized, and lived. The company eventually moved the creative team out of the house and into a bigger space downtown. Dahlia wasn't invited to lead the expansion. Her position was absorbed quietly into a consulting role. HR speak for exile. I didn't gloat. I just stopped waiting for them to do better. The lease remained untouched. I stayed. One morning, while the kettle warmed, I opened the notebook I kept tucked behind the flour tin, the one I'd started the week after Ellison's ultimatum. I flipped past every page of pleading, of wondering, of rehearsed conversations that would never happen. On a fresh page, I wrote, "This home is no longer available to people who confuse love with leverage." I tore the page, gently folded it twice, and placed it in the binder next to the lease agreement and deed. Then I watered the roses, the ones my father planted, the ones they couldn't take, the ones that stayed,